Right, so I am William Evans, and this is Multidimensional Thinkers, and we are now busy with the first of the training videos to understand how to actually work outside the cage, how to work supernaturally with your data. Right, you need to listen to the introduction if you haven't yet, and if you need that, you go to multidimensionalthinkers.com. And from there, you can see version 7. When you click on that, you will notice there's a hyperlink to a list of videos. One of them is the introductory video explaining the cage. Right. So if you work within the cages, and there's 7 layers of these cages, if you work within the cages, you're not able to get beyond various of the challenges that you're going to run into. You will be stuck with um, only being able to see really through the rearview mirror. Driving forwards, seeing through the rearview mirror, trying to predict the road ahead of you is not going to work very well. But yeah, so have a look at the introductory video. Then from there, we take it to understanding the various areas that I said I would actually do some explanation through. But before we can get to that, come back here. And we understand that various advancements, scientific advancements, etc., have been done. And certainly, if you go to CERN, for example, you see that statue outside of CERN, the statue of Shiva, which is the creator, sustainer, destroyer of the Hindu religion. It is strange that they would put a religious artifact outside a scientific place. Well, the reason is because within that scientific place, they have to study the Vedic texts. And they study those Vedic texts because they've recognized that you can only get to a certain point with your logical mind. If you're going to get any further than that, you have to work supernaturally. Now, that's what they do. They engage with the spirits, and they engage to be able to work, and they use the Vedic texts and so on and so forth. Well, for me to succeed in the way that I have and coming to version 7 of the framework, and as I mentioned in the introduction, I have worked supernaturally with the Lord, and He's provided this journey to understand data. And this is for your average person. It looks complicated. I'm not saying that you need to be a data scientist at all, right? The question is, how do you, as a normal person working with data, how do you actually work supernaturally? Now, you can either go to the dark side, which I don't suggest. I've been there, and it is an absolute nightmare. The fear and all the rest of it that comes with it is terrible. The love, the joy, the peace that comes with going to the light side, which where you will find, and we'll get into it in a minute, is actually the route that you want to go through. And when I say the light side, I'm not talking about 1,000 points of light and Freemasonry and all the rest of it. I'm not talking about them at all. So if we go to the information value chain, this is explained in various others of the videos that are available. If you go and you have a look at the ones presented to Dharma on that version 7, you can also find that link. The real challenge is where to start here. Where do you start trying to address this problem? Well, it's around alignment. Most of this people are doing in one way, shape, or form. Most of this people are doing in one way, shape, or form. The part that they're failing on is this alignment. Alignment, of course, means that you're aligning something to something, which means you have to align resources to the procedures. And so in that alignment from resources to procedures, the question is, doesn't matter what you want to do with that procedure. If you don't have the right resource, you can't do an alignment. And your resource, the quality of your resource and the truth of your resource and the source of your resource, that is paramount to being able to apply this correctly. So we're going to tackle the resource side first. And to tackle the resource, we have to address a concept called meaning. And to follow that through and take you on a bit of a journey, and we'll use the Bibles just because it's a good example of challenges around meaning, right? And so when we start with this, so first of all, I need to just give you where I'm sourcing this from. I'm sourcing this picture that I'm going to show you from a video called Battle of the Bibles by Walter Veith. And you will see, and I'll show you the clearer view, but you're welcome to, and probably insightful for you to actually watch this video. You can go to YouTube, and that's the name of it. So that's the source of this image that I'm going to show you now. Right, so when we look at manuscripts, the key is we don't have any originals, right? There are no absolute original manuscripts. All of them have been lost. Now, Walter will explain to you why this side and why this side is not correct, right? The traditional texts are the ones that actually have stood the test of time. The Alexandrian side comes from the side that practiced magic, that library, all of that. And so we know which way this is leaning, right? And this is done by the Gnostics. The Gnostics did not believe Jesus is God. This original is the translation that was done by Tyndale and Wycliffe. And these are other Western family of codexes, etc., for the Bibles. Now you can see there are offshoots of these, right? So this source comes straight from the original texts down to King James Version 1611, right? And you'll notice here there was been revisions. You've got the New English Bible. Now you've got even later ones that are revisions of revisions, etc. And what you'll find with in terms of doing these revisions, there have been changes made to suit the times. Here, there's no changes made to suit the times. You get what you get. Right? In the King James Bible, something that doesn't come out in the Battle of the Bibles, is when Wycliffe, oh, by the way, the only people who were ever killed by the world system for making a Bible was Tyndale and Wycliffe, right? The rest, the world is quite happy to accept those Bibles, but there's something supernatural about these Bibles that actually does something different. And we know that the world systems, they need to control education, they need to control all these different things. If you are within these others, your mind cannot have the neural pathways that get generated by this version. This version causes you to think outside of the data cage. The others will keep you in the data cage, right? All of these other ones. This one will allow you to think out, provided you do not read the italics. The italics was added to try and keep the cage in place. But the people would not accept King James's first version because he had simply added these additional words in. And the original that had been translated was translated with the gaps. The gaps direct from there, the gaps were left. And the reason the gaps were left is because it's a partnership. This Bible is a partnership. You need to work with the other side, with the spiritual side, to understand what it means. So those gaps are there for the other side to fill in. They're not there for people to fill in. But 1611 version, King James had then filled in those gaps. But because the people would not accept his Bible, he had to put those words into italics to say, okay, you see, I'm going to use this as an educational tool to teach the people how to speak the King's English, because clearly they don't know what they're doing because they've got all these gaps. He did not realize that those gaps were actually part of the original text, and those gaps were there intentionally. So when we talk about meaning, we need to understand that there's an interesting dynamic around time. The first dynamic is some part of the text can stand no matter what. It's not going to be affected by time. Other parts of the text will be affected by time. So, for example, if in a long time ago, and I'm not referring to the Bible here, I'm using an analogy, if in a long time ago, they only ever had a front door, as an example, then what would happen, front door to their house. And I write a sentence there and I talk about don't open the door to strangers, right? That's my sentence. Don't open the door to strangers. But in those days, we know they only had a front door, all right? So when I read this, don't open the door to strangers, I go, hang on a minute. I need to be more specific here. I need to go and I need to say, don't open the front door to strangers to sort of make it, as far as I'm concerned, more accurate and more palatable and acceptable. But what happens is over time, we get more and more doors to the house. We now have a back door. Does the sentence, don't open the back door to strangers, is that also true? Yes, it is. The problem that you sit with is that now you've made it specific here and you've said it only to the front door. So now the meaning can never apply across time because you've made it specific. Now, there are other reasons why these texts were made specific too. And one of them is King James had a monarchy. He couldn't have a challenger to his monarchy. And of course, God is absolutely a challenger to the monarchy. And therefore, he had to reduce Jesus to a person. He couldn't have Jesus being God. And so you'll see that also in the text, those things have also been adjusted. So when you look at this mess and you understand the politics that plays over time, the political thing saying, well, I've got to make sure that people don't see certain things. When you understand that over time, meaning changes, and because meaning changes, people who insert different things or adjust the text actually to a God who is outside of time, who's written it in such a way that he's left the gaps so that no matter what part of time you are in, those gaps will have meaning to you and you can apply it to your own life. Therefore, this version is the only version that I've discovered actually works properly. And bear in mind, I'm slightly autistic, so I have read many of these, and I'm now on my 30th time through the Bibles. The last 20 have been through the King James Version, and the last 4 of those have been reading no italics. The changes in the neural pathways in my brain have allowed me to step outside of the cage. And so I'm not saying you need to read the Bible, 30 times. I'm not saying that. This is a journey I've already trodden for you. What I am saying is that you can have just hang on a second, guys. You can have your neural pathways built to allow you to go beyond the cage if you're reading this. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a Christian. I'm just saying you need to read this, and you need to read it without the italics. If you discover things in there that that actually change your mind about where you are in life, well, then so be it. But I'm speaking specifically from a data perspective, right? Okay. Like I said, if you want to get some real insight and to actually see some examples of changes that are made and things like that, going to this particular YouTube Total Onslaught Battle of the Bibles. Um, and yeah. So let's go back to this. We're talking about alignment. To seek two scriptures to support you, those two scriptures need to be in context. They cannot be distracting. So the thing to understand is that you will not be able to just read little bits and pieces and get this. This needs to be a thing that you just do on a day-to-day basis because it's going to change the way you think. It's going to allow you to get outside the cage, right? And so the resource again is the old King James Bible. So if we go, you can go and download this particular piece of software. It's called eSword. And let me just take that off. It's e-sword.net. You can download it. It's for free. It comes with a King James Version and a King James Version Plus standard, right? The reason why is because these are 1611 and therefore copyright doesn't stand any longer, and that's why they send it through, right? Will these be changed over time to suit the powers that be? Probably, but right now it's owned by a family, so at this stage it's currently safe. You can download other Bibles that you can use, you can compare, you can do parallel works, etc. with it, etc. So you'll see that this is King James, and then I can go to King James Version Plus, and because the Old Testament was in Hebrew, I can see the Hebrew numbers here. And in terms of meaning, I can go through and, for example, for this one, for the word angels, right? We can see here it's gives you a really good understanding of how to capture meaning. And so if you wanted to do your definitions, so it says it's for this, properly a part of, so it's properly a part of that. And you can see how to write these things out. Right? It's using the Strong's Concordance. So for those who are wondering how that works, Strong's Concordance. But what we can also do is we can go and say, all right, I would like to see all of, I'm now on KJV Plus. I'd like to see everything relating to angels. Right? And I can see all of these ones. And I notice immediately most of them are H4397. And when you go through there, you can see that it talks about, let's just can't drag this up. Can't drag this up. So that's the H4, that's H4480. So H4397. And it tells me, okay, it's basically a messenger, specifically of God. So it's a messenger of God. That's what H4397 is. So I've got the same word, but that same word can have multiple meanings. So when you think of your business glossary, your taxonomies, and various things like that, you need to understand context of the sentence can change the context of your word and its meaning. And so then you come down here, 4397, 4397, and then you run into this one. Well, this one has got two words. So it's a, you click on there, 4480. It is a properly a part of, and then you go to the second part, properly a part of what? 430, which is plural of gods. Plural of gods, right? In the ordinary sense, but specifically used in the plural thus of the supreme God. So when you look at this particular thing, right, just to show you how misinterpretations or mistranslations can take place. It says, "For thou hast made him," in other words, God has made man a little lower than the angels, is what it was translated as. But this definition, this particular meaning of angels, is actually talking about Elohim, and Elohim is in fact God, right? Himself, God. Why plural? Because he's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right? Which is uh, basically the three of them. When it says Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that Son just is translated that way because it's talking about coming out of him. Your words are a part of you, God's words are a part of him. You could say that your words are your son because they come from you. And so that's the reason why you have son, right? And then, of course, his spirit is his spirit. So it's one God, but there's three parts or three presentations like water, ice, and vapor. You get the same principle there, right? So you notice how there's this change there. Now you scroll down a bit further to see we got an H47 here. And this one is angel, bull, chiefest. And this one actually is referring to the fact that they ate food that belonged to the angels. So in the Exodus, in the desert, they were eating angels' food. That's what manna is, right? You go down further and you see most of them are H4397. And then you switch from Hebrew to Greek because the New Testament was written in Greek, right? And you'll notice here we've got angels G32. G32 also refers to the fact that it's a messenger. The angel is a messenger, right? And there's quite a lot of references to angels in the and all this red text is Jesus Christ's own words, right? He talks a lot about angels. He talks a lot about what's going on the other side, right? But all of them are G32s, 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 just about all the way, except when we got this G246, 465, and it's like an angel, right? So in this case, it is like an angel. Now, why is this so important to understand in terms of meaning? Now, I'm not saying that you as a normal data person need to go through and go, oh, I'm going to have to study every single one of these letters here to understand. I'm trying to get a concept across to you, right? And the concept is that while you are reading this, you are going to build neural pathways that understand how meaning works. So you can look at this and say, oh, that's the logic of it, that's fine. And you're going to try and apply it in terms of the way that you learned at school to apply things. That's not going to work for you. If you're going to think according to the way you're taught at school, you will stay inside the cage. That's how the cage works. You have to think beyond it. And the Bible being taken out of school means that people can no longer think in a out of the box, sorry, not out of the box, out of the data cage way of thinking, right? So with that in mind, we come back to this part here. So if you want to take this route, this journey, then what you need to do is you need to say, fine, I recognize I can't go beyond my current way of thinking if I remain thinking the way I currently do. If I remain thinking according to the way I've been trained to think, I'm not going to be able to do this interaction on a spiritual basis, right? The reason why on the dark side they use the Vedic text is because it does a similar thing, only it brings in all sorts of kind of incantations, etc., that engage the spiritual realm from the demonic side. And of course, as I said, they live in fear. They live in fear, and it's once that side gets you, it's really difficult to escape. Remember, I told you that I was possessed. So I understand this that I'm referring to. It's a reality, right? If you want to get out of that, it's really easy. You just say, Jesus, please help me. They are not allowed to stop you, but you have to make that decision. Um, Now, that's where we start in terms of the resource. So, for homework for this training session, I suggest watch that Battle of the Bibles, and you don't have to watch. It's an entire series. You just need to watch um, the one that was on the screen plus the one that says changing the word. And you can see a lot of how meaning was changed. And also, you will see the personas involved as to why it was changed. You will see politics involved as to why things were changed. Um, and it'll give you a sense for understanding that things are not as cut and dried as people try to make it out to be. And you need to be able to do that to be able to think outside of the cage, right? Great. So that's be the end of this video. And yeah, we'll do the next one, which I'll wait for the leading of the Holy Spirit. Might be taking it up to that one. I'm not quite sure. And so we'll work through these things, as I said in the introduction. Fantastic, guys. Have an amazing day.